Okay, so in this video I wanted to talk about jit.gl.multiple, which after I got through my kind of jit.gl sketch line art phase, this was the first object that I was really interested in because of how it allows you to create instances of shapes and objects and position them, and that's just what I wanted to do with once I started moving into working with 3D objects as opposed to just lines. So I kind of want to go from scratch through the different ways that I use it. I wasn't intending to make a whole tutorial about jit.gl.multiple because there's some really great ones out there, and I had to watch all of those 100 times in order to understand this. But maybe just talking about it the way I understood it and kind of showing the reusable modules that I made for myself along the way will be kind of interesting, I hope. And so jit.gl.multiple was kind of confusing for me for a while. And it turns out that it was because I didn't really understand how to use jitter matrices, or really kind of like visualize what was going on inside them, which you need to have a handle on in order to send, like the right messages to jit.gl.multiple. The main thing for me was just not really being able to see what's going on inside of a jitter matrix. And I didn't know about this for a long time because at first, when I started learning Max, jitter matrices were presented to me as like a way of working with video, and they're really just ways to store frames of video and all the color information and that kind of stuff. But it took a while for me to get that you can use a jitter matrix to basically like put whatever data you want inside. So for example, this is a jit.matrix. It's 3 planes. It's float 32, so all these values are between 0 and 1, and this just has 1 cell. Right now, everything's set to 0. If I change this to a noise, jit.noise sends out random values, but this is just looking at 1 plane in the matrix that comes out of it. So using this cell block object, which is super useful, as opposed to the, what's the other one, jit.matrix info, which I always looked at the help file and I always pulled this out when trying to understand jitter stuff, and then I would send this into here and I would look at that, and that didn't really tell me much about what was actually going on inside. It took me way longer than I would like to figure out that I could use jit.cellblock to do this. So get that out of there, and I'm going to tell each of these to look at a different plane. Okay, and so now when you send a bang to jit.noise, you can see, oh, there we go. You can see that it's generating 3 random values, 1 for each plane of this matrix. This is plane 0, plane 1, and plane 2. And once you understand that, then you can start using jit.gl.multiple correctly. So it takes an argument, it takes a context name. In this case, I don't have a context name. Then you say 1 at gl param, and the first one I want to control is position. So I'm going to send that into there. And it needs a target, so in this case I'm going to make it a grid shape. make it a sphere, and I'm going to make it kind of tiny for now. So there's that grid shape, right? If you delete it, it goes away. If you plug this straight into there, right, you're moving it around. These values are now the position for this grid shape. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And the reason there's only one of these instead of multiple of them is because of the dimensions of the noise object here. So I'm going to get rid of, I'll leave them up for now. So I'm going to get this attribute dim. I'll change it to 2, send a bang, and now there's 2 of them, right? Maybe I'll give them some lighting so you can see them better. All right, there's 2 of them, and they're kind of stuck together because the random values aren't going very far. They're just going from 0 to 1 on every axis, X, Y, and Z. So in order to kind of spread them out a little bit, you've got to take these values and scale them. So there's 2 different ways I kind of do that. The first one is with jit.op, and the operator uses multiple. Then you set the value. All right, I'll make it 1 by default, but then you can send it a message. Like that. Let's just make it 2. Now they're a little more spread out. So make it 4, now they're more spread out. And let's add some more of them, do 8. Okay. And just to show kind of what's happening with the position, I'm going to put these together. I'm going to send this to a jit.gl node. So I'm going to render this whole jit.gl multiple to a node and give it a handle. So you can see how they're all on the positive side of all 3 of these planes, actually. Right, on the X and Y and Z, they're only going between 0 and, in this case, 4. None of them are going back in this other direction. Okay, so in order to kind of center them a little bit, can do something similar with jit.op instead. Can subtract. In this case, it would normally be from 0 to 1. Coming out of here, I'll make a comment here. It's going from 0 to 1. That's coming out of here. After this would be, I'll do this. All right, so I'll tell it to subtract 0.5 from whatever's coming through, because that would center it from negative 0.5 to 0.5. And then here I'm still doing the multiplication, so now they're centered right around the origin there. If I go back and scale it, right, now now they're central. They're centered around 0, 0, 0. They're going positive or negative. So using jit.op this way is fine, and I hope that is clear. What it's doing is it's just doing this operation on every incoming matrix. So it's doing a subtraction to every cell. In this case, it's doing a multiplication to every cell. To make that a little more efficient and easier to work with, you can do that stuff in jit.gen. So here, send a matrix out into jit.gen. Get rid of this stuff, and as this matrix comes in, do a subtraction. Right, and this is how I centered it, 0.5, and then I'm going to scale it, but I want to scale it by a number I can change. So I'm going to say param. I'm going to call it spread, and I'll set it to 1, and then multiply by your spread. So whatever value spread is what it's going to multiply it by. So that should give us the same thing. I need a float. I need a message that says spread $1. Right, so it's negative 0.5 to 0.5 again. If I do this, now we've got the exact same kind of behavior, not 78, but 8. There we go. All right, so same kind of thing. So now it's centralized there. And let's say, you only wanted, so now they can move on any axis, X, Y, or Z. Let's say you only wanted it to happen on the Y axis, so that it's only a random position, but it's straight up and down. Then what you could do is so take the Y value that comes out. Swizz will just separate out that one value, and at the end we want to create a message or a vector, right, with X, Y, and Z. I only want the Z to have a random value in this case. So I'm going to plug the Z back into the little subtraction multiplication thing, and now the points that come out are only going to be 0, some random number, and 0. So the Y is what's getting affected there. So let's see what happens there. I got to give it a spread again, I think. All right, so now it's only, reset that, only up and down. All right, so you've kind of constrained where that random value is going to be. Okay, so that's just working with one param, with position. You can do that kind of operation for any other parameter you want, basically. So, like, let's add another one. Let's look at scale. All right. Right now, there's no object because they all have 0 scale. So let's set make a matrix. Let's give it the same dimensions. All right, so now we're doing random position and random scale. All right, and I don't like the look of that, so what I'm going to do is something similar to here. And instead of just being the Y or subtracting, this is scale we're talking about. So I want the scale to be the same number. It can be a random number, but I want them all to be the same number. So we'll have the spread thing there. Just send that through there, and then whatever comes out of here, actually what I want is, I just want one value. So let's say the X. I'll take the X, send that to spread, and now all of these will be the same value. So when it scales, they'll all scale by the same value. So that way you've got some, you've got some quick controls over the position and the scale of objects. The other one, like kind of transform based, that you can do is rotate XYZ and not rotation. And not rotate. So just to show this, because this got me a whole bunch of times. Rotate XYZ spins an object around that axis by whatever degrees you tell it. So like in this case, I'm rotating the whole jit.gl.multiple around the x-axis, around the y, and the z. Rotate is totally different. Rotate is, I think it's like quaternions or some crazy system. Yeah, I don't even, I'm not messing with that. So just use rotate XYZ if you want to randomize the rotation of every object in the jit.gl.multiple there. Okay, so yeah, at this point you can position objects, you can randomize their position, randomize their scale. Just a lot of the stuff that I was trying to emulate, that seemed to be the way to do it. And at some point I got it in my head to, instead of using a grid shape, use a video plane. Video plane, so let's reset that, take it back to 1. Okay, so there's the video plane. And I'm changing the scale of it. Pull this back a little bit. Okay, so there's my one video plane flying around. And I thought it'd be cool to have a video and have like a cloud of videos controlled by this GL multiple. So if you take a video, let's use the old roller blade. See that right in there? I'm going to silence that for now. Right, this behaves just like any other object. And I thought this would be cool for some kind of video collage type patch. This is kind of neat, and at some point I thought I'd like to be able to, make a grid out of these. So how do you get a grid? And also to control their scale all at the same time. So what's happening here is, these are both generating random values for jit.gl multiple. If I want something a little more controlled, I'm going to put these away for now. So I want something a little more controlled. I need to generate a grid. So let's go back to just a matrix, 3-plane, float 32. And since it's a grid I'm after, I'm going to give it two dimensions. So let's say 4 by 4. Actually, I'll make it 2 by 2. Okay, that way I can see that there. And if you plug that into there, it doesn't really give you much. They're all sitting on top of each other because this all that you're getting out here is zeros. Just an empty matrix you're sending in. So again, I'm going to go back to jit.gen. And I need to get grid-like coordinates. The matrix here is already kind of a grid because it's 2 by 2. So what you can do there is, instead of just taking the matrix in there, you start looking at its coordinates. In this case, there's the norm object, which gives you normalized coordinates of the input matrix. That goes from 0 to 1. So the cell, let's go back to cell block. Right, so the cell here is going to be 0, and the cell over here is going to be 1 because it's the edge. And then that's its x component. Its y component will be 0 for this one, and then 1 over here. So this is 0, 0. This is 0, 1. Okay, so editing this now, I was wrong. This is, the top left is 0, 0. The top right is 1, 0. The bottom left is 0, 1. And the bottom right is 1, 1. That's all. The sign normalize, it goes from -1 to 1. So it's the same thing, just -1 to 1. So so yeah, there's the coordinate system that I want, the grid system that I want. I'm gonna do the same thing I did in the other one, and say param spread multiply by the spread. And I can use the same message here. Okay, and my scale is still set to something random from over here. So in order to fix that, what I'll do is I take a matrix. I want the same dimensions for this one. Plug that in there, and with this matrix you can use the set all value to set all the cells of a matrix to a certain value, and then I'll use the float to do that. And you gotta bang this matrix. All right, so let's make this message set all comma bang. So that as you change this, there you go. Now you're scaling them all. And I hope that makes sense why. It's this value is in every cell of the matrix. So when you send it into here, each cell gets that value. And here's my spread. In this case, I'm going to do the same thing with spread. No, actually, it doesn't want to bang. I'd have to send this through again. So there's a couple ways you could get that to update each time. I think the way I like doing it, well, you could say, trigger bang list. You could send that message there and then send a bang to this matrix, And now the spread updates every time you send a new one in. Let's set all just to see what it looks like. Let me use that random scale thing. There you go. There's your random scales. For now, I want to set them all to be the same. Okay, so that's kind of cool. You've got a 2D grid, really, and what blew my mind at some point was when I thought, you know, I want it to be in like a Rubik's Cube type formation. So you can add another dimension to this matrix here and make it 2 by 2 by 2. And let's do the same thing here. Okay, send it bang in. Change the spread. And there you go. Now you're working in 3D. To make this easier, let me do an int and a message dim $1. Send it to that one and to that one. So it's doing the same thing as the a Trui box, but actually what I meant to do was say $1, $1. There we go. So whatever number I put in, you get the same on each axis. There we go. So now it's a 4 by 4 by 4 cube. So I'm gonna have to break this up into another part. This was a lot of experimentation for me to figure this stuff out and get to this point. The next thing I wanted to figure out, and this was over the course of like, you know, months, a couple of years that I was thinking about this stuff, but the next thing that I wanted to get a handle on was changing the textures so that each one or each row or column or whatever could have a different video playing on it. That was something I wanted to work on. I'll try to throw these patches up on my website. I'm working on updating the website to have like a little patch archive. But I don't know. Talk about it, I guess. In the comments, people do that. Whatever. End video.